So this is part two of my rant about the Silicon Valley banking fiasco. So if you haven't watched the first video, I'm doing a promotion, I guess. Go watch the first video, which sort of highlights my thoughts about the bank and also give some alternatives on which banking alternative, Brex and Mercury, you should check out. So just in case you need it. Anyway, the reason why I'm doing a second video is because after I did that first video, I just kind of had some sort of flashback moments about the banking sector. That's my 5:30 alarm. Sorry. So the banking sector, which by the way, I'm not going to edit these videos. These videos are supposed to be raw, just straight cut videos. At least that's my intention. So I'm not editing it. But anyway, back to what I was saying. So the banking sector has always had these sort of ups and down moments, right? But generally speaking, it you like the financial sort of like roller coaster turmoil. um I don't know what other word I can use to describe it, but basically like the mess, right, is just kind of hidden under the covers from most people, right? Most people go down their merry way. They got a job, they got a 9 to 5, they get paid. And so they don't necessarily think about sort of all that financial infrastructure that's kind of, swirling above their heads until it impacts the bank, that then cuts off the employer company, that then kicks you out of a job. And then suddenly it's real to you, right? Like that's kind of like we're somehow tuned to kind of dismiss stuff, right? So the only reason I'm bringing this up is because this really, really got me thinking that one of the reasons why this company, Silicon Valley Bank, got to a place where they're in this sort of hot water is because they're trying to leverage their money, right? Like you bring your money into the bank, and I'm not a banking expert here, so you know, half of this stuff could be wrong. But the point is that the general principle applies. You bring your money into the bank, they take that money and they put it into other financial institutions, and then they leverage it in order to make more money, maybe loans and all the type of stuff. But they also have to pay, just like, oh, you if you have a mortgage, you have to pay money. They have to do the same thing too. And again, no financial expert here, so not telling you any sort of how the financial system works, but that's a general principle. And as the feds basically raise their interest rates, these banks were obviously being affected. And basically what it boils down to is, aka that hole that I mentioned in my previous video, according um, to the Economist, they were trying to raise $2.5 billion to plug a hole. But if your bank is plugging a hole, your bank, you got some other problems, right? Like if your bank sent a statement say, hey, don't worry about your money, don't worry about it. Um, we're just trying to plug a hole right now, so but your money's safe. Like, take your money and run. Okay, so the point is that they were raising this money to plug a hole, and the question is, how big of a hole? $2.5 billion, and was that like a this month patch hole, or is that a this year patch hole? Like, well, and then the fact that investors were like, yeah, no, bank, we're not investing in you because clearly you're not doing well. And they've looked at the numbers, and that's why they couldn't raise the money, right? This is a bank can't raise money. And if a bank can't raise money, that tells you something, right? A startup can't raise money, that's one thing. A bank not able to raise money, that's a whole lot of game. So the reason why I'm ranting about this a second time is because this brings back a lot of, um, I'm going to use the word trauma, but not in the traditional sense, just personally, like startup trauma is probably what it sort of classify it as, right? Like I don't pretend to be traumatized as like real people that are traumatized out there, just to be clear. But in 2008, when we had the financial crisis, the biggest problem that at least from my perspective, that happened was like the financial crisis was happening from like 2007 backwards. I keep doing this, but I'm using this to lineage to sort of highlight the lineage of time. Um, and in 2008, um, 2007, the financial crisis was happening, right? But it was just happening kind of like in this cloud, right, over your head. Nobody's like paying attention to it, just don't look at the shiny objects kind of situation until basically Bank of America sort of collapsed, right? It up until that point, it wasn't really real for a lot of people. You heard about it for I don't remember the exact series of events. I don't remember if it was just Fannie and Freddie Mae that you know they got sort of like they ran into financial issues first, or was I think AIG was in that mix as well too. AIG was one of the early ones, right? But whatever the timeline is, it doesn't really matter. I think for most people, at least from my perspective, it was when Bank of America like was like going belly up and just basically was just going to default and everything, right? And then Barack Obama was coming in at the exact same time and had to like jump straight into like go 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 mood. Hey, what do we do? Like scramble and just bail out the whole country, literally, right? And the point is that Bank of America was doing all the subprime mortgage, et cetera. And I'm not trying to give you a history lesson here. All I want to say is that domino effect was the first, in my opinion, to truly sort of like just bring the whole system down. And when I think about the Silicon Valley Bank, while this is, I think, from what I read in the limited access to information I have from The Economist, because I don't pay for them, they suggested that this is the 16th largest bank in the world. Sorry, in the US, the 16th largest bank. So from that perspective, the 16th largest bank in in America is like, okay, so they're not that big, but that still can create a domino effect. I don't know to what degree, probably irrecoverable, but the real question is if the 16th largest bank in America just went sort of belly up and needed a $2.5 billion sort of plug a hole money. The question is the 15th largest bank, the 14th largest bank, right? I don't need to count all the way down. The question is what's going on there? And we don't know, right? Clearly, the Feds are raising interest rates at a ridiculous rate. Job numbers just came out, and the uh, employment rate in the U.S. is higher than everybody expected. So sorry, the employment rate, the percentage is lower than unemployment rate. Sorry, is lower, which means a lot of jobs were service or whatever. People were hired. So this is a rant, but what I'm really trying to get at here is that on my personal side, when a Bank of America hit the things hit the fan, it was when things hit the fan for me in 2008, and that's basically what I mean. I spent 8 minutes on this video, and that's all I've been trying to say for the longest while, which is that these things have unintended consequences. When one bank sort of like hits the fan, you know, then stuff is coming, and as an entrepreneur, as a like if you're a business owner or business, you gotta really start calculating how you're gonna start pushing through these next few months, because shit's coming. I don't know if I'm supposed to say shit. I just saw a YouTube policy about this, and I don't know. Anyway, whatever. um Spaghetti's coming. So yeah, we got to be prepared. We got to be really really prepared for that. My final thoughts are actually one of the story. So in 2008, and this is the reason why I brought this up. This is where the flashback is. Again, I'm ranting here, so the thoughts are all over the place. But the reason why this really, really hits home to me, because when Bank of America went belly up in 2008, I was in Antigua at the time, and things were really bad. I was struggling. I was really, really struggling, like financially struggling, mentally struggling, didn't know what I was going to do next, etc. Business was not going good. Like, it was just every single thing was just in turmoil. And my thought process was, I mean, every single thing is like struggle, like just you're just struggling. Like, there's no money in the country, and I think it depends on tourism. No U.S. people are traveling. No, right? Every single thing. And I said to myself, you know what? I'd rather be in a first world country, okay, in a first world country, Canada, back to Canada, than just struggling in Antigua. And so I was trying to jump back on a plane. However, I went down there specifically to close some deals, and connected with, I had I connected with the Bank of Antigua locally, and I signed a contract. It was like a $50,000 contract, which was a lot of money for me at the time. And it was a really, really big deal because I signed this contract to build the website for the Bank of Antigua. And I'd also closed another deal for the Ministry of Education, a project in Antigua. It was like a $25,000 euro project. Why euro? Because there was some money coming, some European companies that was funding this endeavor. And also, I closed a $15,000 project to for a real estate project. So I don't know, close to like 100K. It was a little bit under that, but close to 100K, 80K or something like that, right? Um, in projects. And basically, what ended up happening is when the Bank of Antigua, no, sorry, when the Bank of America made their, like, just couldn't do any single thing. I got a call on the day that I was coming back to Canada. I'm not making this stuff up. On the day that I was coming back to Canada, and they told me, they said, "Hey, Mr. Brown, we're not going to be able to pay your. Oh, sorry, we're not going to be able to go ahead with this project," is what they said. And that was like, bam, just hit me, just hit me. But I was like, oh, I got $50,000. Like, okay, so I lost that. I still got a couple more projects to go. And sure enough, one after the other, they all fell. The Ministry of Education project fell out the cracks because Europe started having their own crisis. And the projects and the money that they were going to, lend to Antigua or whatever to do this project got cut. And then on the real estate side, the company that was doing the real estate project was getting all of their investors from Miami. And Miami was going through all of this sort of financial subprime mortgage type of stuff. So they cut their investments, right? So the point here is that these financial institutions have obviously long lasting effects on society and as a whole, and sort of, domino effect type of stuff. But it, like, the need for any single time you start to see this kind of pattern, right? Like, we don't know what's coming. I can't pretend like I know the future, but what I can say is that stuff's happening at this level that we're not really seeing. The feds are trying to push up more interest rate because they're trying to do this whole, employment, cool economy, inflation, yada 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 kind of stuff. And it's hurting these financial institutions. But it's hurting them because they have always, and they will forever make risky moves that put, our financial sort of um, money at risk. And frankly, they'll just get bailed out. They'll move to the next project and they'll just move on with their lives, right? Like, they're not gonna be kicked out on the streets like most people if they can't pay their bills. It's just the frustrating thing for me here. And again, I'm ranting, and I know I am, but my rant has one very specific point, which is, if you're a startup founder or a business owner and you are like struggling right now, start conserving some cash. Like, start conserving some cash, and like, batten down for hard times. If you don't know what the word batten down means, look it up. But in the olden days, when I used to when I lived in the Caribbean, and a hurricane is coming, hurricane is coming, so you batten down all the windows, you lock up all the windows, and you board them up and such like that. So you got to batten down, man, because you know there's some rough times coming. It's very, very clear. So you got to be really, really smart about it. Anyway, I'm over my 50 mark. I promise not to make any sort of like super long video because it's just, I feel it's pointless eventually. The watch time just decreases. But yeah, this is just my rant part 2 about this whole Silicon Valley fiasco. So yeah, that's it. That's all I got.